Gary from Bolton, England, been listening since 2014. He says, who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of WWE Intercontinental Champions? And do you think Gunther and or The Miz deserve to be on there? For me, the ones I most associate with the title and the ones on my Mount Rushmore are Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Razor Ramon. That's my Mount Rushmore of Intercontinental Champions. I think if you wanted to show some love to the Ultimate Warrior, whatever you think of his matches in general or him as a human being, he was a big Intercontinental Champion. You know, he was the one who ended the Honky Tonk Man's run. He had some great matches with Rick Rude, including their SummerSlam 89 match when he won the belt back. He headlined WrestleMania, the only time the Intercontinental Championship ever headlined a WrestleMania 6, with him and Hogan. So if you had Warrior on yours, I think he has to be in the conversation. As far as Miz, and Miz has had 8 runs as the Intercontinental Champion. Combined days, I looked it up because I was curious. Combined days, he is second only to Pedro Morales. He's only 25 days away from tying him. Pedro has the most combined days as champion. Honky Tonk Man has the longest reign as champion for now. But Miz has had many, many days as the Intercontinental Champion. He's had a couple of runs there that were actually pretty good. The one, was it 2016 or 2017? He went on a tear as the Intercontinental Champion, had a good thing going there for a while. I have to think of Miz matches when he was the champion. I mean, he had matches with Ziggler. They had their match at No Mercy in 2016. There was a Fatal 4-Way that year at one of the pay-per-views where Miz retained. That was great. There was the triple threat at WrestleMania 34 he was part of. He had a title match with Rollins at Backlash that year. So, yeah, I wouldn't fault you. I think Miz, you could definitely argue that Miz deserves a spot on the Mount Rushmore of Intercontinental Champions. He has done more up until the Gunther run. He had done more for that title in the last 20 years than anybody else had done. And it still wasn't enough to get that title defended on a lot of the pay-per-views and stuff, but he did what he could. I think Miz is in the conversation. I think Gunther may get there. It's still too early for me. Even though he's been on this incredible run and he's brought more prestige to the belt, it's too soon for me to say, oh, he belongs on the Mount Rushmore. He's not on my Mount Rushmore. Miz I thought about. I did think about Miz, but for me, I got to go with Perfect, Bret, Shawn, and Razor. That's mine. Chris from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada. In 2016, following his rant on Talking Smack, The Miz was being pestered constantly by Dolph Ziggler. Miz keeps refusing to wrestle him for the IC title until Ziggler offers to put his career on the line. The match was at No Mercy in 2016. It was an emotional match with a hot Sacramento crowd. Is there a feud that you loved that nobody talks about? How's that for a coincidence, by the way? I get an email about that Miz and Ziggler match from No Mercy after just talking about Miz and Ziggler from No Mercy. A feud that rarely gets talked about that I loved. Well, I'll give you one. And the payoff was great. Was Ted DiBiase and Virgil in 1991. Virgil had been his manservant. He had been with DiBiase since 87, since DiBiase came into the company. And he would do his bidding. And I remember they had, in the build-up to their match, I remember they had this video. And they showed Virgil from over the years being his servant, basically. And he was, like, picking the dirt from between his toe. I mean, like, really degrading shit. And so they were together for years. And then at the Royal Rumble in 91... Dusty and Dustin were a team against DiBiase and Virgil. And DiBiase and Virgil won, I believe, because Dusty was on his way out. And I guess they had been building to this, and it was just this moment where DiBiase was ordering him, pick up my $1 million belt and wrap it around my waist. And you could tell the crowd, they desperately wanted Virgil to just whack him in the head with it. And then he did. And the place went crazy. And we got a Virgil DiBiase match at WrestleMania. But the payoff was at SummerSlam that year in Madison Square Garden. DiBiase defended the $1 million title, and Virgil beat him for the championship. And it was just this big, and I remember as a kid watching that, and it was such a big moment, right? People talk about Bret Hart beating Mr. Perfect on that show, but Virgil winning the $1 million belt from DiBiase was almost as big for me watching at the time. But DiBiase and Virgil, man, I mean, that's one that doesn't get, I think, enough love. I don't think enough people talk about that. Noah the Mark from Miami, Florida. I know this guy. He won't leave me alone. He was listening to Mick Foley on one of his Ask Mick Anything podcasts, refer to himself as Mr. In Your House. Is he Mr. In Your House? And if not, then who is? He's definitely in the conversation, but I don't know that I would call him Mr. In Your House. He had the Mind Games match with Shawn Michaels. He had the Buried Alive match with The Undertaker, which I always liked that match. Their Revenge of the Taker match after WrestleMania 13 is also very good. And his Over the Edge match with Steve Austin in 98, which turns 25 years old this week, by the way. And then the only other one that I would name would be maybe his Breakdown In Your House match in September 98, the triple threat with Rock and Ken Shamrock in the steel cage. So that's a damn good resume. But Undertaker had a ton of great In Your House matches too. So did Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. I would be inclined to go with Shawn or Bret, but if I had to pick just one, I would go with Shawn Michaels as Mr. In Your House. You know, he had the match with Jeff Jarrett in Nashville in 95, where he won the Intercontinental title. The Good Friends, Better Enemies match with Diesel. That was the No Holds Barred match. The Mind Games match with Mick. The Ground Zero match with The Undertaker. And then their Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood the following month. That was an In Your House pay-per-view too. I just think the quality of those Shawn Michaels matches, that is tough to beat. Bret had the match with Hakushi at the first In Your House. He had the match with Jean-Pierre Lafitte. The match in Hershey with the British Bulldog where Bret bled a gusher. Bret a gusher. And that was the one where he won with the La Magistral Cradle. Bret was part of that great Final Four match where he won the title and then he lost it on Raw the next night. The 10-man tag at Canadian Stampede. So, I mean, look, you can make the case for all four of those guys, but I probably would go with Shawn Michaels in the end. Mike from Lower Hutt, Wellington, New Zealand. I've been listening since about 2014. My question is regarding AEW's rights fees. As far as I'm aware, no numbers have been reported yet. If there is an increase, whether it's for Collision, Dynamite, or all of it, what changes, if any, would you like to see with the added revenue? Set production improvements, better pyro, a new audio technician for those backstage segments. What would you like to see? They shouldn't need more money to fix their audio. I don't know why they still have issues after all these years. I would like to see them invest in a totally new set for Collision, for one thing. Something that sets the show apart from Dynamite. Pyro, I don't really care about. Pyro is pyro. I would rather see the money invested back into the talent and use it to stay competitive with WWE for top talent. If the talent gets paid more, that's a win for them. One other thing, though, that I would like to see, and Tony Khan has been very generous about this, is more music licensing. I understand why he didn't pay for Final Countdown for Bryan Danielson, but man, I wish he would. I wish he would have been able to get that. But I'm sure there are others. He got the Baltimore theme for Jungle Boy. He got Jane for OC. The Elite come out to, for their trios matches, they come out to Carry On Wayward Son. If it makes sense for the individual talent, I would like to see more usage of actual licensed theme music, but I know that costs money, so maybe he can funnel some of the money in that direction.